Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Economic Development Committee meeting. Due to a COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Council is practicing physical distancing and all of the councillors are participating electronically. In order to ensure that the meeting functions smoothly, I think you know the ground rules, we've just been through them, but if you're on phone, *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise your hand. Otherwise, you can use the icons that appear when you press participants at the bottom of the page. I'm going to ask Leanne to do roll call.
Chair Redmond.
Here.
Councillor Erb.
Here.
Councillor Galloway.
Here.
Councillor Harris.
Here.
Councillor Jaworski. We do not believe is here. Councillor Jowett.
Here.
Councillor Kiefer. Councillor Kiefer. We see you. He is here.
I'm here, but I'm not on the committee. Is that okay?
You are on the committee.
Well, I thought I wasn't.
No, you are.
No, he wasn't on the committee.
I didn't think I was.
No, he wasn't before. I mean, I don't care, but he wasn't before.
Okay.
I thought I saw him sit beside me at the last meeting.
He was on the list that was approved at inaugural, but okay. Councillor McGarry, I don't believe is here. And Councillor Verbanovic, who I think had to step away temporarily.
Correct.
We have quorum.
Terrific. So we're going to proceed when we have to vote the same way we did for the committee day, and you will go again through your participants and hit the yes or no icon. I would ask, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal of Conflict of Interest Act? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we don't have any delegations. There are no registered delegations. I'm going to ask Matthew Chandy to share his screen for this presentation. Matthew is the manager, Office of Regional Economic Development, Planning, Development, and Legislative Services. And Rod, do you want to make introductory remarks, or should we just throw it straight over to Matthew?
I think we can just hand it straight over to Matthew for this one. This is an agenda that's had a lot of preparation, and it's pretty full, and there's some important things here, particularly with regard to our employment land strategy and our grants program. So I think best to hand it right over to Matthew and get on with it. Super.
Take it away, Matthew.
Okay, thank you. I guess the first thing is the terms of reference for the committee. So I just wanted to start there today. We've created a bit of a terms of reference to provide some clarity to some of the roles of the committee and some of the areas where the committee can help advance some of the economic development priorities outlined in particular the region's corporate strategic plan. And so some of the key areas that we were looking for some support on was obviously providing direction on a lot of the economic development projects that we're working on right now, but also as new projects arise. Also having economic development representation from the region at stakeholder roundtables or meetings with business development partners or community partners that involve our economic development projects, and obviously also providing input into regional policies and plans that have an effect on or an impact on economic development in the region. So That's sort of a very brief summary of the terms of reference that's in front of you. And it also outlines some of the 2020 projects that we had outlined to be focusing on this year. There's work happening around the East Side lands, which we're going to be talking about shortly. There's smart city initiatives, again, something we're going to be talking about shortly, as well as ECDEV grants. We do a lot of work around economic development data and doing sector analysis and supporting businesses here with that data, or groups like Waterloo EDC who use that data to then go and support their foreign direct investment initiatives. Talent attraction and retention is another area that was identified as a priority in the region's strategic plan. And obviously other key initiatives like TOL to Go and the Toronto Waterloo Region Corridor. So those are that's a bit of a summary on the terms of reference that we've put forward for consideration by the committee.
Turn my mic on. Thank you very much, Matthew. Are there any questions? I guess, Matthew, this isn't a question as much as an observation. So what I really hear you saying with the terms of reference with this report is the fact that we really do amplify the bandwidth of organizations like Waterloo Economic Development, and the research and the stats that we amass are used by other groups.
That's correct. We, our economic data analysts actually on our team actually works directly with Waterloo EDC to make sure that their information portal, for example, is up to date. So a lot of that source information comes from our team at the region. We're happy to work in collaboration with them, but also others too, the other area municipalities, and also businesses too, our post-secondary institutions, industry associations. When it comes to data in particular, we work closely with a lot of those different organizations throughout the region to help identify what the opportunities are, moving forward. So that's a key part of what we do, but there's also a number of other strategic projects, for example, where this committee can, again, as you said, amplify support for advancing a lot of those projects or initiatives, again, a lot of which are outlined in the region corporate strategic plan.
That's terrific. So you're actually presenting this for information. We don't have to express ourselves on this. Do you want us to receive this for information or support it, or is it just sort of for?
I'll maybe also ask our clerks team to provide some guidance there, but this would be in terms of reference for the committee to adopt.
Okay, it should be my motion. Is there anyone prepared to make that motion?
I don't think you've addressed the structure of the leadership for this committee yet, Karen, so I don't know that anybody can make that motion. I actually think you have to do your election before you do the motion, don't you?
This could be. I'm chairing it right now because of COVID pandemic, and we don't know how long it's going to be. Are people okay if it meets 3 times a year? Is there anybody that has an issue if I just serve as chair until we get back to normal?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so would somebody like to nominate me as chair?
I would nominate Chair Redmond as interim chair or chair, whatever.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. So is that Jim and Helen? Any further discussion? I will recuse myself. All those in favor?
Oh, geez, I can't get to my.
I'm in favor.
I guess if you're opposed, you hit the X, and I won't hold it against you. I promise.
So now, do you want a motion to accept the draft terms of reference?
Okay, so that motion is carried. So now I would entertain a motion to accept the terms of reference. Jim, are you making that?
I'm making that.
Helen, are you seconding it? Helen is saying yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. And Matthew, just a word of thanks. I mean, one of the things when you look at the people that use this and the groups and the projects, it's done so much in concert with other bodies, and we know that that's how we are successful in marketing Waterloo region. So thank you very much. Matthew, are you still up?
Yeah, so I'll move on to the next item, which is the BestWR.
Okay.
I think this was touched on already, and I think everyone's aware of all the work that is underway with BestWR, but I just thought I'd quickly highlight it again, that it is, it's now a couple weeks into, we're in the full swing of finding ways to support our businesses and our not-for-profits in the region. Our team here in the Office of Regional Economic Development, between the team members, we're actually on 5 of the working groups for BestWR between us all. So we're really trying to right now ensure that we work in collaboration with their municipalities, groups like Communitech, the Chambers, the Waterloo EDC, to make sure that we're getting information out quite quickly and responding to questions from companies quickly as well. So, I don't think there's any need to sort of go into this further, but I just wanted to let the committee know that there is full support or active support from our team members in the ECDEV office, across all the 4 pillars that they had established as part of BestWR. So it's more an item for information.
And I'm going to comment. I don't know if Helen is looking to wrestle her dog or she wants to talk, but just Matthew, I really want to commend your department and Rod on the fact that it's existing relationships that allowed BestWR to get up and hit the ground running during a very chaotic period of time. And I even look at the requests that came in through the COVID pandemic control group from school boards and allowing the technology to be pushed out to people who are in low income that may not have home computers. All of that's predicated on the fact that we collaborate, we cooperate, and that's in our DNA, and it just makes responding in a nimble, quick manner so much easier. So thank you. We're building on a lot of relationships and a lot of credibility that has been amassed over the years. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I see Councillor Burvanovic. Barry?
Thanks, Chair Redmond. And I want to echo those comments. I mean, I think a lot of great work has been done and things that we are continuing to work on. The only point that I'll make that I think is important, because we do have a historical sort of understanding around what the economic development bailiwick of the region is, what of the lower tier municipalities are, and what collectively we have given to Waterloo EDC in terms of business attraction and so on. And so I think as we work on this, it's really important that we continue to do it collaboratively with each other and sort of see each of us continuing to work within those historical understandings.
Okay, I see no other comments, so thank you for that update, Matthew. Reports, Province of Ontario Job Site Challenge request for submissions. And again, Matthew, you're up again? This is the Matthew show.
No, Ryan Mountsie and Emily Kipfer from our active office are also here to provide some support. So Ryan's also going to be talking about the Job Sites Challenge. I'll provide a bit of an intro on this. So if committee remembers, I had sent out an email to council late 2019 when this program was launched by the province. The province is in the process of creating an inventory of mega sites. And the whole concept is to really attract large scale manufacturing companies to the province. And so trying to work with communities, identify what are some of those optimal sites where that can happen. So sites are typically between 500 and 1,500 acres, and that's what they're trying to create an inventory on. So they put together a challenge. It was a call for proposals really from municipalities or communities that could fit this criteria. So the region of Waterloo, working with the city of Cambridge, the township of Woolwich and Waterloo ADC, have been working on putting together a submission for the east side lands, which we feel would fit into the criteria for the most part. We're going to proceed with making that submission pending approval from regional council. Just as a recap, the job sites challenge, it's really, there's no financial support. If you get selected or your site gets certified, it is in fact, it's really an endorsement from the province. You get support from an internationally recognized site selector. There's some international marketing of the site. And there's also support with streamlined approvals from the province. And so that's really the focus of it. It is to sort of have this this inventory marketed internationally to support attracting investment. So the call for proposals was actually due on March 31st. Given COVID, the province has extended that deadline. So that's what we're doing right now. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Ryan on our team to walk you through the details of our proposal.
Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Hi, committee members. Matthew provided a great overview, and I'll just take a moment just to reiterate the points that I've been hearing about collaboration. This is a collaborative submission. No single group can submit sufficient land on their own at this time. And so this is a collaborative request to you as council to identify a series of sites to submit to the province. And we reviewed the 13 criteria that the province outlaid in terms of the criteria. And some examples of this, very high level. Matthew talked about the land area. So these are very large sites. They need to be zoned and shovel ready within a very short period of time. And so those are some of the challenges, but opportunities as well in terms of preparing employment lands. Location criteria such as proximity to the 401, that's an area where this community excels well. Same as in terms of infrastructure, being close to the airport, access to rail. These are all part of the criteria. I would note there were some other criteria in there, sub-criteria, where the application process gets very detailed. And so what we're doing as a team is we're identifying a series of sites that collaboratively we can identify to the province to say there could be opportunity of 500,000 to up to 4 million square feet of employment land. And so as a group, we'd like to make a submission with your support to identify to the province that collectively we can certainly support industrial investment. There is a lean towards automotive with the submission, but it's also advanced manufacturing. And so Toyota is here as one of our great companies. And so this adds to the strength of making a submission to the province. I just note that we do not have a single landowner. And in the report, it outlines a series of landowners that it takes to meet the minimum 500 acres. These are gross acres, not net acres. And we identify the sites that address some of the fundamentals. And so I talked about location, I talked about manufacturing hub. Talent and training is another key criteria what the province is looking for. And this is an area of strength for our community. So we're summarizing all the details that relate to the submission. Just a couple other points. The list of criteria outlined in the appendix section, but things like incentives are discussed. We may have to come back to you over time if there's questions and clarifications from the province about the application and submission. but we're identifying the development charges as a competitive advantage, which you approved not too long ago in August as a competitive rate. Site readiness is a key piece of the submission. Generally, the province wants the sites ready within a year. This is a bit of a challenge. There's no question about it. But in working with the partners, we've been able to identify about, I'm going to say, about 900 acres of land, of employment land amongst the various property owners, but about 450 acres is short term. And so about half the land, it could be ready for some type of employment opportunity. It doesn't perhaps meet perfectly the provincial criteria, but it's a great start and it can support a lot of the industrial uses the province is looking for. And so in some of the properties, this can be a start point for the province to be aware of because they're looking for a range of sites. But there's a greater land supply opportunity, and that includes the province of Ontario, Infrastructure Ontario, excuse me. And when you include the infrastructure lands in Cambridge, and these are all concentrated on the east side of the region, northeast of Highway 401 and the Grand River, is that there is 900 acres of potential. It will take time to service this. It will take additional support to move these properties, but we think that this is a compelling proposition that with the support of Waterloo EDC, the City of Cambridge, the Township, to say collectively, here's some sites for the provincial review. Next slide, please. In terms of the sites, what we've attempted to show is the short-term sites. In speaking with the property owners, it includes, and they're providing tremendous support, is Intermarket with phase 1 and 1A and 1B. Obviously, they're moving ahead with their own leasing activities and opportunities right now, but there's about 131 acres of land that's shovel-ready within the year in terms of IP, in terms of Intermarket. And these half these lands are located in the PISR lands, and so this is important too to know that the lands are being designated for employment. In terms of the phase 3 lands, I just highlight Intermarket recently sold 300 acres of land to Hoop. This is a very large hospital pension fund, and my understanding in working with the City of Cambridge is that plans are being advanced to prepare some of these lands. So we're asking permission, and we're working with other property owners to include their lands as part of the submission. What we do know is that the region also owns our own land, and we have a pocket of land with YKF. And a portion of this land, it may not seem like a lot, but it's a start to allow some of these employment opportunities to be presented to the province. And lastly, the provincial lands. They used to be called the Ontario Realty Corporation lands. Sites on the appendix section and in this map here, sites 3A and 3B, those sites are located in the PISR lands. They will take the longest time to develop and to get their planning designations, but we're adding that on to show the longer term opportunity for employment. I note that we've received endorsement letters from Intermarket to say that they support the challenge objectives. We've received endorsement letters from the province of Ontario for longer term employment opportunity, which is very important. And certainly by us adding in a pocket of land with the airport, and we're waiting to hear back from Hoop. We're working on that relationship to include with the submission. So without getting into a lot of detail, I'm taking up a fair amount of time. I think I just highlight a couple other quick points and then turn it over. In terms of the sites, we're preparing a detailed application, almost a stakeholder submission. This stakeholder submission would represent all the properties combined and would go in under the banner of a Waterloo Region submission. And it would include the different property owners to say that there's an opportunity for employment land investment. And so we can't act on their behalf, but we're working together to raise this to the provincial attention and awareness. Waterloo EDC on the side is also providing support through this process. And we've worked with other groups to help move this forward. Grand River Transit has been very supportive in terms of looking at transit opportunities over time. And we're working with the college to talk about their training opportunities. So I think in terms of next steps, what we're looking for is that we do require council direction to move ahead with moving forward with this submission to the province. As Matthew indicated, the submission date has been bumped out a bit, but we'd have to turn this around within the next week or two. In terms of council direction, we're asking for us to proceed with the application. In terms of candidate sites, excuse me, we're still waiting to hear back from Hoop to be a part of the submission, but we have all the other property owners on board. We've worked with our legal team to go through some of the details, and we have to do some fine tuning in this application submission. And in terms of pulling this together, this is showcasing the individual sites with the fundamentals. And we're looking in terms of a timing that we would submit this to the province, and they'll review this with a third-party site selector. And it will be up to the province to determine if you qualify as part of their candidate sites or not. Obviously, we'd be following up to see what their review and what their thoughts are on the submission. But it's imperative that to the best of everyone's ability to provide some opportunities to the province at this moment in time, particularly given what's happening. That's our thoughts on this. And if we hear back, we'd come back to council in terms of any directions or if there's any future interest. So maybe at that point, I'll just kind of pause and to say this is a collaborative project and look forward to hear back.
Okay, I believe, Helen, did you have a comment or a question?
Thanks, Chair Redmond. I actually do have a little question. So first I was going to ask, but you answered it, how many of the stakeholders know? Because Carl and I are probably going to start getting calls on this at some point. And so I guess we're going to need some key speaking notes here so we don't overstep, if you know what I mean. And then the other thing is, so Hoop doesn't know, so that's fine. But 2 of the properties are owned by the province and 1 by the region. Does that make us more attractive or less attractive for something like this?
Who'd like to take that?
I can certainly start on that, if that's okay, Matthew.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a preference to have a single ownership. And so if you have a large property, that is preferred because it's the least cumbersome. It is very hard to find 500 acres, let alone 1,000 acres in Ontario. So we think by working with the City of Cambridge, James has been excellent with the City of Cambridge in facilitating this. We've provided a lot of technical information to help advance the position. Mr. Lamantia has been very helpful in guiding the tone and the direction of the strategy. And so, yes, it's a little awkward. There's no question about it. But you have a regional municipality, which is good to have. And that's what this application process is intended for. It's intended for agencies as well and property owners. So we're collaborating with Intermarket, and they see value in adding their lands of what's available. And in both Intermarket and James Goodrum has outreach to Hoop. So they're aware that we're moving ahead with this. We just have to close the loop and circle back to move forward with the formalities. So I'd say that it's rare to have this assembly of land, and certainly with the province of Ontario with their endorsement letter, this large block of land is located in the City of Cambridge, and it will have tremendous opportunity over time. So even though it's not ready today, down the road and through our official plan review process, it could unlock some opportunities in terms of future longer term investment.
Does that answer your questions, Helen?
It does. Much appreciated, Ryan.
Okay, I've got Carl. You have questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Redmond. Thanks, Matthew and Ryan, for that presentation. It's probably more of a comment than a question, but I'm liking the direction that staff and the EDC, the Waterloo EDC. I have trouble saying that, of course, but I like the direction they're going. And to me, this type of thing here, where we could an opportunity with the province to get involved, I think we need to see how quickly or expeditedly we can do this, because I think the faster that this thing can get through, then the better it is for the region and also the companies that are going to be coming in here. There's going to be some employment created, no doubt, by this as well. So I like it. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Galloway.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, a great initiative, and hopefully we'll get it. And even though there's no financial incentives, there's certainly a marketing advantage. So my question is that does the application require the City of Cambridge? Or first of all, does it require a regional council approval? So this committee would approve it, and then it would go forward to council. And does it similarly require a motion from the City of Cambridge and the township?
Thank you, Councillor Galloway. Great questions. There's a technical submission in an appendix that the province has prepared, and you have to go through all the individual criteria, and they're very challenging to reach all the criteria, and so we'll go through the process as a joint shared stakeholder submission to outline the competitive advantages, to talk at a high level about the strengths. We'll zoom in a little bit on the individual properties, and what we do need is owner consent from the property owners. And so through this process, what we're doing is we're structuring the application to say, us as a region is providing a submission. We're compiling a series of properties for the province's review. We are adding contact information for the individual property owners if you have any questions on the individual properties. We are not doing this legally or liably on their behalf. We're doing this to promote the employment opportunity. And certainly in terms of the City of Cambridge, they provide an endorsement letter in terms of approvals and in terms of working with the applications to ensure that they move forward. Cambridge has an excellent track record of facilitating industrial development. And so this is the type of applications in recent times that the province is looking for. And so Cambridge doesn't need to sign off on this as the applicant, but they are providing an endorsement letter. And same as a township in terms of approvals as we move through these steps over time. We're just looking that they're on support. Thank you.
And through you,
Matthew?
Chair Redmond, just an additional comment to that. We do know that in working with the area municipalities, Cambridge, this report that's in front of you right now, the township and Cambridge will be taking this report to their councils as well. So this will be shared with those councils as well. In the interim, we got the endorsement letters, but their councils will be seeing the same report.
So technically, the application process does not require regional council approval, City of Cambridge approval, or the township approval. Is that?
So through you, Chair Redmond, I forgot to answer the back half of your question there, Councillor Galloway. I think what's needed is an endorsement of the principle that's outlined with you today to talk about the collective support for the employment objectives. In terms of approval, we'll have to seek through some approvals independently on the application on the YKF lands, just to ensure that permissions are granted on the YKF component. But in terms of moving ahead, the report would provide a bookend to the submission to saying Council, Regional Waterloo Council is endorsed of the concept, and here's all the supporting information. So the component will be the individual property submission, not less so in terms of the individuals.
Okay, I think I understand, yeah.
So just for clarification, anything that's approved here, and I will entertain a motion shortly, just for all of our information, it will go to the council meeting. And I have two questions, if I could. And Ryan, you've sort of, I think, answered this, but this can go forward with or without HOOP, or we need HOOP to be part of the submission?
Chair Redmond, the HOOP component is a very important piece in terms of rounding out the employment land potential. So we can proceed with the properties without HOOP, but it makes it far less attractive in terms of the land area requirements. And so this is a 300-acre parcel of land for employment. I'm sure plans are being advanced behind the scenes as they work through their next steps. But this would be an important piece to have, not critical without it, but it would lessen the shovel-ready opportunity. In speaking with the project team, I would just highlight that there's been some discussions third party back and forth with the general support for this concept. Rod Regier sat as part of the project team in terms of trying to pull this together as a package, and everyone, including Intermarket, in terms of the province, has shared the idea that let's just get the sites in front of the province to see what the opportunities are. So within the next week or two, we hope to close off the hoop component, and we will make a formal submission following your decision. But we'd like to have hoop as part of this if we could.
And one additional question, and that is, this in no way encumbers any of that land. If anything, it should be seen as a marketing and an ability to speed up the processes for development.
That's our approach, Chair Redmond, and we did not take an as aggressive submission in terms of saying we will commit, we shall commit. We're saying that we will endorse, we'll support the concept and principles, but we're not encumbering the lands at this stage without any proposals.
Super.
And just to add on that, Chair Redmond, that is very much the intent of the Job Sites Challenge, is to expedite development of lands, marketing of the lands. Two key components of being selected or having the site selected is expedition of approvals from, if needed, from the province to make the lands ready for investment. So I think if anything, this accelerates the whole process.
And just somebody who's worn a hat of developing land when I was at Habitat for Humanity, that's as good as money in the bank. Expediting processes is amazing. So I'm going to say I have, I see no other speakers. A report before us to accept this report, moved by Councillor Erb and seconded by Councillor Galloway. Recommendation is that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo take the following actions with respect to the Province of Ontario Mega Job Sites Challenge. Point 1 is to authorize staff to submit an application to the Province of Ontario. And the second is to authorize staff to develop a marketing plan for the east side of the region in collaboration with partners to facilitate industrial investment into Waterloo region. Councillor Galloway, do you have a comment? Are you voting?
I voted.
Okay, all right, vote away. So unanimous. Very well. That's great. That is carried. The next topic on the agenda is the economic development grants, entrepreneurial initiatives, economic development. And again, Matthew, I'll give you the lead on this one.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. So this is the report in front of you has to do with our annual economic development grants. I think the last time the committee met was actually last year to review the grant applications we had in front of us last year. So just as a quick recap, that there is two streams of funding for our economic development grants. There is the entrepreneurial stream and the event stream. There's a total of approximately $147,000 in grants available, and that's split between the two streams. The entrepreneurial stream has about $72,500, and the event stream has $75,000. And as a reminder that the activities that these grants support are supposed to align with the economic development priorities outlined in the region's corporate strategic plan and also the Waterloo Region Economic Development Strategy. So we opened the application period at the end of February, and it remained open until about mid-March. We did do an open call for applications through the region's website and through our social media channels. We received, I think we received 9 in total applications, and we're recommending 7 organizations receive grants today between the two streams. We did have some last minute updates for the committee that came to our attention on Thursday and yesterday in light of COVID. And so we just wanted to provide some updates on that. Under the events stream, there are two entities that we had recommended receive funding. That's the Cambridge Highland Games and Oktoberfest. Cambridge Highland Games notified Helen, who I believe is on the call, Helen on Thursday that their board has decided to cancel the games, which was scheduled for July. I believe they're currently assessing whether they will reschedule that to later in the year, but that is very recent information we received. And then I believe Helen also followed up with Oktoberfest, who have identified that they are planning to scale back their events this fall at the current time, and obviously will continue to reassess over the summer as it gets closer to Oktoberfest. We also had the opportunity to confirm with the five recommended recipients for the entrepreneurial stream. All five of the recommended recipients have confirmed to us that they have already started planning or have already made the switch to deliver their programming in a virtual setting or online. So in most of that conversion has already happened. So wanted to let the committey know where these grants or where the report stands in light of COVID. I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan just to highlight for the committee the seven recommended grant recipients.
Take it away, Ryan.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Matthew did a really good job outlining the principles of the report. So I just note that two groups didn't have the scale at the regional level to move forward, but we will be circling back with those groups to talk to them about other opportunities in terms of culture and economic development. And so that was iHelp, and the third group was, or the second group was Nigerians of region of Waterloo. And so the other groups, Junior Achievement of Waterloo Region is talking and working about a large charity group devoted to youth financial literacy. They asked for $36,750, but we're recommending $23,500. And the reason for some of the adjustments from the original ask is that there's a growing number of groups that are applying for this grant application process. So we tried to proportionately distribute it amongst the various groups. And so that was with Junior Achievement. In terms of the new group that applied, they've been around for 10 years, but KW Youth Robotics, they asked for $10,000 over 2 years. But based off the available funding, they are outreaching to high school students in robotics competitions and in STEM training. And so we recommended $7,000 for that group. In terms of the business and education partnership, this group connects certainly in terms of local schools, businesses, and professionals, and they really work with networking and entrepreneurship skills. So that group asked for $17,000, and so we were able to identify $10,000 of funding, knowing that that was a modest increase from the 2019 application which they received. In terms of Waterloo 4-H, they have a very strong volunteer program. They work with youth as well, and to focus in on things like, I would say, agricultural training, education, and they asked for $2,500. They were the smallest amount of being requested, and so there was room to match that at $2,500, which is an important part of their funding. Matthew talked about the Cambridge Highland Games, and Helen is here as well. And I just note that most of the groups, we received a response back with COVID-19 that they are able to manage and to move forward. They see a need more than ever to provide programming and job growth and entrepreneurship opportunities. Some groups, I just note that because we've received some revised work programs and recommendations, if council wants to move forward with these. And I should note that Leadership Waterloo asked for, before I jump to the recommendations, but Leadership Waterloo asked for 70,000. That's almost the entire budget. And so we were able to identify 29,600 of funding that can be allocated. They did increase their programming with this submission to include things such as an affordable housing lab. And so in terms of leadership opportunities, that's their core purpose. And so I didn't want to be remiss in noting about Leadership Waterloo Region. But getting back to the point of the recommendations is that if council decides following the questions to move ahead, some additional wording in the recommendations should be considered following through to receive confirmation of an adjusted plan and to deliver the online programming or something to that effect. We need just to make sure that we have an updated proposal to reflect their programming needs. I had this in writing from almost all the groups in terms of the entrepreneurship grant program, but we should ensure that that's covered in the recommendation if council chooses to move forward. I think I'll leave it at that stage, Matthew and Chair Redmond, in terms of highlighting the applications and the funding.
So Ryan, thank you. And I have two speakers. Just for clarification for myself, the KW Youth Robotics is $7,000. Is that over 2 years or 1 year?
They have asked for it for 2 years, and Business and Education Partnership as a detail, there's some flexibility in the application to stretch it over 2 years, but the funding in talking with our finance team is to pay it out in the first year, and then the monies can be distributed in equal payments between 2020 and 2021, but they're asking for a 2 year for KW Youth Robotics.
But would it be $7,000 in each year or $3,500 in each of the years?
Thank you for the question. It'd be $3,500 for each year, $7,000 total.
Okay. I had Councillor Harris.
Thanks, Matthew and Ryan, for the report here. I guess one thing I think there'd be more uptake, especially in some of the event grants that may be available. And I'm just wondering if, forgive me, the entity that does our not our economic development, but our hospitality agency. I'm trying to think of what the name.
Tourism Waterloo Region.
Yeah, if they don't help promote this granting opportunity to perhaps members that they reach out to, I can think a lot of organizations that may be eligible for this grant. But all in all, I think you've listed and answered the question I had originally, was with some of those events that may be on the bubble, in fact, from going this year due to the situation, what that funding status might be, and whether they may be, in fact, I guess Oktoberfest, you said, scaling back. Highland Games may be punting their date down the road. But I would move the motion once the questions are answered based on your recommendation here. I think you guys have done a good job, so thank you.
Okay, who would like to take that, Ryan or Matthew? Ryan, do you want to start out?
Thank
you. Matthew.
Yeah. Okay, sure. I'll take that. So yeah, and actually, I'll just also remind the committee that we are going through a review process of the whole grants program. So I think that will be done this year. Our finance team is leading that review, which we're feeding into, and does include the economic development grants. As to your question, Councillor Harris, about the tourism organization and the marketing support that's done for Highland Games and Oktoberfest. Actually, maybe if I could turn that over to Helen, who is on the call to speak a little bit more to that, because she deals directly with both the Highland Games and Oktoberfest and also the tourism organization.
Okay, welcome, Helen.
Hi, everybody. So am I understanding correctly, the question actually is, why are there so few applications, and did Tourism Waterloo Region help us to promote the advertising of the opportunity?
Yeah, I would say not why there are so few. I just said, you know what, I mean, obviously the ones are the ones that have applied and have met that criteria. I'm just surprised perhaps that more haven't applied for this, and that, you know, has that organization, you know, encouraged, you know, perhaps those that may meet the criteria to apply. Or are we happy with the outreach fact that we're getting based on these submissions?
So I suppose there's multiple layers to this. One is that the region also supplies grant funding through the Arts Fund to organizations who are doing festivals and events. So that part, there's a certain amount of communication that goes through it. And also Explore Waterloo Region had their own festival grant funding program available this year through the Municipal Accommodation Fund. And also we're very cognizant of the fact that this grant program in particular really needs to be reviewed and revised. The grant criteria at the moment say that it needs to be a one-off event, and historically we've been funding organizations who have ongoing events. So it's I think this is that prime moment for us to be able to look at and review and understand whether we've structured the right funding program for the events that we're trying to support in the region. So kind of a long-winded approach to say nobody really put the information out there hugely widely, understanding that the program needs to be reviewed.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Harris? Okay, Councillor Jowett.
Thanks, Chair Redmond. That was a lot of information, Ryan, and I don't know if I actually heard you say this, and it might not even be a real factor, but is there any kind of contingency for actually having the event itself? Like I know that Helen's probably been in touch with the Highland Games, but I received a letter because I was supposed to be their plans, whatever, this year, and I was under the impression they're not having it at all this year. Now, would it be suitable for them to still take the funding, and we don't have a position in that, and they maybe get to use it for next year, or help keep themselves afloat, because there are these not-for-profits that have invested and lost some money thinking they were going to be able to pull this off.
Maybe.
Oh, Ryan.
This related to on the entrepreneurial side, not the events side, but on the entrepreneurial side. We received feedback on most of the groups moving ahead with revised programming. And yes, you're right, Councillor, there is a loss of some revenue for some of the groups. And so this is even more important, but they are improvising and they're being more robust in terms of the back end. And that's why in the recommendation for recommendation number 1, to include a recommendation such as reading out the last sentence there is upon confirmation of plans to deliver an e-platform program. I turn it over to Helen in terms of the grant side of events of wording at the end of the recommendation to say upon confirmation of an updated events plan and budget. If there is an opportunity to punt it down the road a little bit further to see if they are going to deliver it. I leave that over to Helen in terms of if there's any wordsmithing on the recommendations, because this is moving quickly and there's some uncertainty with some of these programs.
Much appreciated. Helen?
Okay. Helen?
Yes, so the festival has the Highland Games have confirmed that they're not going to be putting on an event this year. The grant is specifically for the delivery of the event, but if you look at things like Celebrate Ontario, they are currently saying, keep your grant, hang on to your grant, keep yourself solvent for the time being, and use it to operate next year. So it's up to this committee as to whether they want to provide them with the grant without delivering a festival just to keep themselves afloat, or whether we want to just, they are planning on withdrawing their application at the moment, but I mean, they have not yet withdrawn it.
Helen, do you have any further questions?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Chair Redmond. Well, given that the return on investment for the Highland Games is pretty good when I consider it. I mean, I think $10,000 for something that has such a draw, and it's not just because I'm Scottish, okay? But I kind of think it might just help them stay afloat until next year. I'm happy to present that motion. I think it's fair and reasonable. And I know that not a lot about the Oktoberfest games, but I think Carl might be able to add in here. But I think that they have been sort of seeing some declines and trying to reorganize, so it might even help support them. Otherwise, what do? Go back to the table and look to start the process over again?
So I guess I'm just going to jump into Helen's question and just ask, was my understanding that KW Oktoberfest are scaling back, but they haven't said they're canceling, so that's still a question mark?
So yeah, that's correct. They have not, they are currently saying that they're scaling back, but they haven't yet canceled their event.
So a variation on the theme of the Highland Games. And Helen Jowett wanted to be chieftain or chief goddess, and she was going to get to do that this year. So that was really disappointing. Councillor Galloway?
Well, I really want to go to the Cambridge Highland Games now, so I hope I don't cancel.
Winnie was going to wear a kilt for you.
Oh, tremendous. My question has to do with Leadership Waterloo Region, and maybe I just didn't understand, Ryan, the explanation there. So they got 40 last year, they asked for 70. You talked about some particular program or something they were considering, and we're only recommending 29.6, which is a lot less than they received last year. They're the only organization receiving less. Maybe I didn't understand your explanation, but what's the explanation there?
Through you, Chair Redmond. These are tough decisions to make, Councillor Galloway. And in evaluating the other proposals about their opportunity to support entrepreneurship, to support the goals and objectives, Leadership Waterloo Region has some very core programming that they continuously deliver year over year. They've added a new element, but based off the amount and the degree that they've asked for, we had to balance it out with the other groups. And so things like the Business and Education Partnership reaches out to 1,000 students as an example. Some of these groups were new coming back. So Junior Achievement didn't apply last year, but they were new this year. And so this is an infusion of an additional amount of money that had to be allocated into the decision-making process. So I think to answer your point is that some of the groups did receive a bit of the money less than what they requested, number one. The only group to get the full amount was Waterloo 4-H, because it's 2,500. And then the events teams received their funding request. Everyone else had less money than what they requested for this year. And Leadership Waterloo asked for the largest amount. So we tried to distribute it based off the principles of equity and to see if we could share some of this with the other groups that are adding entrepreneurship opportunities. So that's the rationale. They made a strong submission. And it's a retention opportunity as well. So they're training future leaders of tomorrow. And the goal is to keep those leaders in our community. And some of the other groups were trying to educate and to train young youth to stay in the community and to become educated and support the job growth economy. So in a long-bout way, it was a tough call to make in evaluating how to distribute those monies. And that was a rationale provided through this report.
So they're aware of this recommendation then. I take it, is that correct? They're aware that they are going to get $11,000 less than what they got last year?
So through you, Chair Redmond, the practice has been that we receive the applications, the grant decisions and reports made available online through the agenda. And in last year, the practice was, I understand, that we notified the applicants following your decision. Matthew, is that the process as I understand it?
Correct. They haven't been notified about this recommended amount.
But in the past, and maybe I'm thinking of a past iteration of the grant process, we often had delegations come to council to speak to their particular requests. So I'm only thinking of process here. That's
right.
I'm not thinking of the merits necessarily. I am concerned about them getting less because I'm not aware. Do we know? So on the process piece, are we okay with making this decision without the organizations knowing what the decision is, and then them, I don't know, they don't have any appeal, I suppose, or do they come to council, full council, and indicate that they are concerned about the level of support they are getting?
So through you, Chair Redmond, to Councillor Galloway, our practice has been, at least in the 4 years I've been here supporting the grants program, this process has been the same each year. So we haven't shifted away from that in the last 4 years at least. And there also, since I've been here too, there hasn't been any delegations that have come forward for the ECDEV grants as well. So the other thing I wanted to just address too, just with regards to Leadership Waterloo Region, yes, as Ryan said, that there is, looking at the total funding pot as one of the key considerations in a recommended amount. One of the things that we are really trying to, I'll come back to my opening statement around alignment with the economic development priorities in the region's corporate strategic plan and in the Waterloo Region Economic Development Strategy, and also our focus on impact and impact in the community. So that is also, and Ryan, I don't know if you can add any more information on that, but talking about Leadership Waterloo Region specific programming and looking at the impact from their proposed programming, some of which aligns with other regional priorities, but also does not align with some of the economic development specific priorities that is outlined in the strat plan in the ECDEV strategy. So Ryan, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that, but that was also, I think it's worth pointing out that that's part of the assessment process as well.
For you, Chair Redmond, if I may, just on 1 or 2 points.
Yep, go ahead, Brian.
This was a challenging process to evaluate, and we have a new strategic plan with the region, 2019 to 2023. And in evaluating talent attraction, education, partnerships, these were some of the elements that we tried to accommodate some of the other groups. And in terms of the percentage of funding for the budget, Leadership Waterloo Region had the highest percentage of their funding coming from the region out of the other groups, came in at 21.31% with the $70,000 request. The region has not updated this funding grant application since I'd say over the last 10 years, or since it was incepted. And so without changing and increasing the dollar amounts for this grant application, and with Leadership Waterloo Region having the highest percentage of their funding coming through the $70,000 request, the other groups came in at 6% for the Business Education Partnership, 15% for KW Youth Robotics, 10% for Junior Achievement of Waterloo Region. These are just examples in terms of balancing out as a percentage of the budget overall. And the goal is to have multiple funding partners to support their activities. So that's why perhaps it was lessened a little bit more so than in previous years, just to balance it out. So I just add those 2 points as kind of some facts and principles of knowing that the entrepreneurship side is an overriding objective through the criteria.
Well, I continue to have a couple of concerns. The one concern is, what does this mean for their operations? I would agree that maybe they were over-reliant on the regional grant for their operations by percentages. So that's something that maybe needs to be corrected over time. But the other concern I have is the message that this sends to them, particularly this year when their entire class is focused on affordable housing. Their entire program this year, all the students in the program are actively engaged in a year-long affordable housing exercise, and at the end of the year, we should and hopefully are going to see some actual positive kind of results from all their investigations and their academic work on affordable housing. So I'm really concerned about the message it sends when they have done this, and they've done it collaboratively with our housing department, and then we cut their funding at the same time. Other years, their academic program has been inspired by individual students just doing their own academic program where they wanted to focus. But this year, the entire class is doing it on affordable housing. So I'm just concerned on the messaging here when we're going to cut their funding by 25%, and we're expecting some kind of a product at the end of their academic program on affordable housing.
Okay, if there's no further questions, Councillor Vrvanovich.
He's muted.
Barry, are you there?
No, he just left it on. He just left it on.
Yeah, I was talking on mute.
Okay.
Thanks for that. And I really wanted to continue along similar line of questioning as Chair Galloway, sorry, as Councillor Galloway, with respect to Leadership Waterloo Region. I do understand and support where staff is going with respect to trying to support some of these other groups that we haven't before. But I also think that at this time, more than ever, in the coming years, we're going to see an increased need for new, fresh, revitalized leadership in many of our not-for-profits as we tackle some of the challenges that are going to be faced by our community in this post-COVID era. And I do think that this is the wrong time to be pulling those resources away, because quite frankly, we can spend that 11,000 at the region or at any of our local municipalities in the blink of an eye. And so I actually would suggest that, in fact, and would be prepared to move an amendment, not that we take it away from maybe some of the other recommendations that are there, but in fact that we increase the 147.6 to 159, I believe that would take it, correct? And that would allow us to continue funding Leadership Waterloo Region at the very least at the level they were funded before. As we know, the region has been a founding partner from the beginning of that organization. It's gone through a restructuring, revival in terms of the work that it's doing, and this has been pointed out. The focus being on affordable housing right now would I think send that wrong message. So, Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, and I can't remember if somebody moved this amount.
Yeah, Councillor Harris has already offered to move this, so we'll have to check with him if that's a friendly amendment. And I guess I'm just wondering within the two envelopes, and so I'm looking to staff here, if the collective wisdom was to continue to give Leadership Waterloo Region the 40,000 as they received last year, can monies be reallocated, say, from Oktoberfest if they scale back, or is the sense of the committee that they'd like to see that 65,000 go irrespective of what Oktoberfest does and continue that grant? So I guess I'd ask Councillor Vrvanovich, would reallocating within that envelope meet your needs, or you want to add to it?
I would suggest that we add to it. I mean, as we all know, Oktoberfest has its own set of problems and are working hard to adjust, reinvent themselves. And so and we've all been part of that, including the recent review. So I think all of us have made a commitment to keep their funding level where it has been in the past. So I wouldn't go there. And by the way, if we do bring this to public, we should change it to a KN Oktoberfest. Small little thing.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to, I have other speakers, but Councillor Harris, you had indicated that you were willing to move it. Do you see that as a friendly amendment?
Well, I guess, you know,
and if you don't, that's okay. We can do it separately.
Probably not, unless I get some, just maybe some logistical information in terms of, you know, I guess where the additional funds would come from. You know, I know that the grant process was an item that we've identified under the KPMG review and audit as, you know, one that we should look at. You know, I obviously know Leadership Waterloo Region. I'm a grad of Leadership Waterloo Region. You know, I don't know the specifics of when they'll require these funds. If I can recall, the intake is typically the springtime. And if they've made some capital investments that they'll need this funding. My question on Leadership Waterloo Region, is there other funding streams from the region that Leadership Waterloo Region receives? Or is this the only bucket of money specifically from the region that they get?
Okay, who would like to answer that?
Through you, Chair Redmond, I do know at this point, I believe this is the only funding that they get from the region for their operational support. I do know the region also sends a student to participate in their programs. They have, at least in the past, on an annual basis. So that which also comes with a fee. But as far as operational support, as far as I'm aware, this is it.
Okay, Michael, do you have any other more questions?
No, just aside from, you know, we've allotted these funds, and forgive me, I've got the report loading back up, but the total bucket of money for these two, both events, the Entrepreneurial grant application and the Economic Development grant, if we were to increase it, where would that money come from?
Matthew?
I would have to, I'd have to go back and we'd have to talk to our finance team.
We'd be approving an over budget.
Is that all okay?
Yeah.
And would that not have to go back to regional, that would be a recommendation of the committee to be then adopted by regional council at the next regional.
These recommendations have to go back to be approved by council either way. But Councillor Harris, if you don't feel this is a friendly amendment, I'm going to ask Councillor Vrbanovic to hold that in abeyance, and I'm going to call on Councillor Kiefer and then Councillor Jow, because you were both in line, and then we'll come back to deal with this amendment. Is that okay, Barry?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Councillor Kiefer, you're next up.
Yeah, thank you very much. I wasn't going to comment so much on the Leadership Waterloo thing as to ask the question of is it too late to, if some of these groups aren't going to go ahead or want to go ahead or can't go ahead because of the COVID or whatever reason, is there room to put in another group, or will that have to wait till the next time? That's the first thing I want to say.
So I guess I would just say that I think part of this whole process was to take the politics out of it, to go back to Councillor Galloway's question about having petitions brought right to council. People can always come to council. I mean, we can't stop them. So I would tell you that of all the people that have applied for funding, it sounds like there has been a consensus, but we haven't voted on it, that the Cambridge Highland Games and KW Oktoberfest would still continue to get their funding, irrespective of whether or not they had events, and that everybody else in the grant line that was receiving funding has already submitted that they will find another way to do it virtually during COVID-19.
Yeah, and I'm good with that, Chair Redmond. I wanted to bring up the fact that I've been involved with a group, a nonprofit group. It's called Hockey Helps the Homeless, and it used to be called KW Hockey Helps the Homeless. I'm proud to say now it's the region of Hockey Helps the Homeless, which is a big move, and I know how concerned we are to distributing monies across the region. And it is a group that could be considered in future if it's too late here, of course. But I just wanted to throw that in there just in case.
Thank you. We'll take that under advisement because, as you've heard, that this whole system is ripe for revision. I'm going to go to Councillor Jowett.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. And so there's a couple of things that I just thought I should clarify. As the previous chair of this particular group, we actually directed staff, and Helen, maybe you can remember the details of this a little bit better than me, but we literally directed staff to warn these groups that we were going to be reevaluating criteria, and that some groups, we were even told to pre-warn them that they would not be getting the same funding as they would have received in the past. Number one. Number two, yes, KPMG highlighted this area, but that's another, I don't think this is a whole lot of money to be over investigated. But the other factor is that the Leadership Waterloo organization gets a lot of their funding from the region because we send a lot of participants. Now, Matthew, maybe you can tell me what the fee is per participant, and that might be helpful in recognizing that we are able to support this group financially through that vehicle. And that might just clarify and help Councillor Galway appreciate that there is another way to help backfill without confusing everything with regard to allocations here.
Through you, Chair Edmund, to Councillor Jowett, to answer your first question, yes, we did already go through a review of the grants. That happened, I believe, 2 years ago, and we did. It was actually at that time that we created these streams, and we actually opened it up at that time to anyone to be able to apply to the program. We actually created an application process because at that time there was organizations just receiving funding on an annual basis. So, and then we did the alignment with the Waterloo Region Economic Development Strategy and the Corporate Strategic Plan. So we did go through that process, and we did notify all of the funding recipients, many of which are on the list in front of you in the report, about that change at that time, and they have continued to apply and have gone through the new application process. So yes, everyone did receive that information and has made that switch into the new application process.
So they've had lots of notice, Tom, which is what you're worried about. But the secondary factor here is, Matthew, do you know what it costs for the average participant at Waterloo Region Leadership? Darren, do you know?
I thought it was 5,000. Sorry, go ahead, Matthew.
It's $4,500.
Okay.
Right, and so do we know how many of the region's employees, this is probably not going to get answered here, but how many of our regional employees actually attend that every year?
I would need to, through you, Chair Redmond, I would need to find out that specific amount. I knew there was at least one a year going from the region through the program, but I'd have to confirm that.
There's one regional and 2 police.
Is that what it is, Tom?
This year.
So isn't that kind of an opportunity, if you'll excuse me, wouldn't that be an opportunity to sort of increase the support for the housing program?
I see it differently. This is core funding versus their actual tuition.
All right, just a suggestion.
So I have no other speakers indicated, so I'm going to ask if Councillor Harris is intending to move The recommendation is written with the caveat that the first point, so this is a regional municipality of Waterloo take the following actions with respect to economic development grants as outlined in the report. Number one, approve an annual economic development grant entrepreneurial initiatives available to eligible organizations to support implementation of the Region of Waterloo 2019-2023 strategic plan and Waterloo Regional Economic Development Strategy. And this is with the caveat that they provide adjusted plans to demonstrate an online capacity during COVID-19 pandemic. I believe that was a suggestion from Ryan. Is that right? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, and bullet 2 would be approve an annual economic development grant, events available, eligible to organizations that support the implementation of the Region of Waterloo 2019-2023 strategic plan. And there were no caveats to that unless we want to clarify that those grants would go forward irrespective of whether event got postponed or scaled back, just for clarity. So I've got Councillor Harris moving that. Do I have somebody seconding that? And then we will deal with Councillor Ravanovich's amendment. Okay, that's seconded by Councillor Jowett. Now, Councillor Ravanovich, do you want to amend that?
Yes, I'm going to move an amendment that on those economic development grants, the Leadership Waterloo Region grant remain at the 2019 funding level of $40,000, which would mean an over expenditure of $11,400 in this line amount. Obviously this will go on to regional council to make the ultimate decision. I'm hopeful that this committee will recognize the importance of ensuring that this organization, which has for some 20 years now played an integral role in helping develop a network of new leaders to take over the leadership of the aging leadership of many of our organizations. And at a critical time like this is not the time to be taking that away from them.
Okay, Councillor Galloway, are you willing to second it? I see that you want to speak.
Yeah, I'll second it, Madam Chair. And people know my position and why, but I would also note that this will certainly not be the first time that we have recommended to council an over expenditure in the grants account. And it is a relatively small amount of money that goes to the bottom line of a billion-dollar operation. So it doesn't have a huge consequence in that regard.
Okay, Councillor Harris, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, my only comment is, I mean, I'm never a big fan of politicians, you know, I guess it's ultimately their discretion and our discretion as elected officials on behalf of the people that we serve. But, you know, to start rejigging a lot of these numbers, I mean, we could literally be here all day doing that. All of these groups are worthy in some capacity. They're not the only group that will have seen a reduction. Actually, yeah, 85. I'm just looking here. I am scanning the numbers. So they are, in fact, the only entity to have received a reduction from their 2019 funding. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. I see no further speakers. So this is on the amendment to give the 2019 funding level to Leadership Waterloo Region, which is $40,000. It will be displayed as an overage in that account, and I would ask everyone to vote on the amendment, either yay or nay.
Aaron, Chair Redmond, I'm in favor. Somehow I've lost my place to indicate if I...
Just click your mouse down, Jim, below the screen and go up
where
to
it says participants.
Well, you're speaking now, Jim, so go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah. Oh, there you go.
I'm in favor. I'm in favor. I would have spoken earlier on the debate, particularly as it relates to the affordable housing. So I'm glad we're restoring their level.
Well, you looked incredibly thoughtful on the screen, and I kept waiting for you to. Councillor Kiefer, have you voted or are you abstaining?
Not a member.
Oh, he's not a member? Yeah, he is a member.
I thought we voted him off the island.
Let's all get off this island soon.
Okay, that is carried. So now we're voting on the main motion with that amendment. So I think I've badgered you all enough with the detail, and I want to thank staff for bringing a bit of a convoluted coming together that was a bit fluid and at the last moment. So we will then be voting in favor of the amended motion. All those in favor, please indicate. Oh, does somebody have Councillor Galloway, do you have a question?
Yeah, and I just want to thank staff for the report. It is staff's job to bring forward a balanced budget report, and then it's up to council to decide whether or not we need to. So I don't want staff to feel that they did a great job on this.
Thank you. I would concur. So all those in favor, please indicate with the green, and if you're against, with the red. Has everybody voted? Carl can't make his mind up. And Councillor Harris, have you voted? Okay, that is carried. And I want to also commend the Economic Development Committee for choosing to be probably, I don't know if more generous is the right word, but recognizing that both KW Oktoberfest and the Cambridge Highland Games will be in a situation where they be very welcome for this money flowing. And again, thank you to staff for a very good report. Next up is hang on. Matthew's going to share his screen with us again and talk about Smart Waterloo Region and Aerospace and Aviation Strategy Update.
That's correct, Chair Redmond.
It is so the Matthew show.
No, I'll just wanted to provide the committee with a very quick update on Smart Waterloo Region. In the new adopted terms of reference, Smart City Initiatives is one of the areas that this committee will be dealing with, and one of those key Smart City Initiatives has been our Smart Waterloo Region project. Despite not being the winning community last year in the federal government Smart Cities Challenge, we do continue to move forward with the project and have been in extensive conversations with partners who came on board during the proposal phase last year to see how we can make this project continue to move forward. And so just for a very quick recap for the committee, our Smart Waterloo Region project had set a goal to become the best community in Canada for kids, really looking at child and youth well-being. The whole concept was to bring technology and data solutions into child and youth service delivery. And so it was a very different twist on what a traditional smart city would be. But we adopted that approach, and we had a lot of success in building a comprehensive plan to try and achieve that goal. It was a partnership between the region, all 7 area municipalities, and a number of community partners in the private and not-for-profit sectors and educational sectors too. So after finding out that we weren't a successful community last fall, we began having conversations with a lot of those private sector and not-for-profit partners to find out their interest in moving forward, trying to identify if there was interest in contributing to the Smart Waterloo Region initiative, supporting specific projects. And so we had a lot of interest in that, but it was really project-based. And one of the areas that we didn't find a lot of support for was the core funding of the project. And so when I say core funding, I meant we had contract staff that were dedicated to the Smart Waterloo Region project. as long as funding things like community engagement and administration and pilot projects as well. Fortunately for us, earlier this year, the Hallman Foundation, who was a key partner through the Smart Waterloo Region proposal development phase, came back and approved $1 million in funding support for the Smart Waterloo Region project over a 4-year period. That funding is to go to those core expenses that I just listed. One of their requirements as part of that money is that they wanted the region and all 7 area municipalities to continue to match that. So that project has now been moving forward in its first year. We've had a lot of partners since re-engage with us over the last couple of months and talk about where they can support on specific project development. So we were planning on relaunching, doing a community relaunch for this project in May of this year. We've been working in partnership with the Children and Youth Planning Table. We've been working on a rescoped plan forward over the next 4 years, which really outlines all the key projects that we would move forward with. Those projects were something that we actually put in front of children and youth in the region and asked them to say what was important to them as far as project areas that we should focus on. So we've had a number of technology companies express interest in partnering with us. And so, like I said, our plan was to relaunch in May, actually at True North with 5 projects. That's obviously just given COVID, we put that on hold and are looking for the most appropriate time to move forward with our community relaunch. That being said, we're still continuing to work on things like some of the staffing action items, reestablishing some of the Smart Waterloo Region committees. And as a reminder for this committee, we had a steering committee made up of the 8 municipal CAOs. We had a community advisory committee made up of leaders from not-for-profit and private sector and educational institutions in the region. We actually had a data and security working group that helped us build the whole framework on how to integrate technology and data securely into service delivery for children and youth in the region. And we also, most importantly, I think, had a youth advisory committee. So we're in the process of reestablishing all of those committees and again, working with some of our key partners, including UNICEF Canada, who is one of the key partners on building the whole measurement framework so that we can actually measure the impact of the work that we do through Smart Waterloo Region. So there is, given a lot of this happened pre-COVID, we have since re-engaged the Hallman Foundation as one of the key funders. They are very much keen on moving forward with Smart Waterloo Region during this time. It's something that they've and many others have expressed that the need to accelerate, if any, some of the solutions out of the Smart Waterloo Region project to support kids. One of the examples of that is we've been actively engaged in trying to rapidly deploy internet access for low-income kids throughout Waterloo Region. That's been a priority for us over the last week, and we've been able to heavily rely on our Smart Waterloo Region partners to come to the table with both the school boards to figure out solutions on deploying internet. So really, we're continuing to move forward with Smart Waterloo Region, and we will keep this committee updated as we continue to advance with getting the core team up and running and also finalizing the revised scope of how we move forward over the next 4 years.
Even though we didn't win, Matthew, it still makes me proud. What a great community. What a great initiative. I don't see any questions. Can I just plumb a little further the measurement framework with UNICEF? What are the parameters around that?
So one of the key aspects of the measurement framework is it's the first of its kind in Canada. It's a framework that actually measures the well-being of children and youth. So there's over 100 indicators across 9 different domains that UNICEF has established to measure how we as a country are doing for child and youth well-being. Our partnership with UNICEF was Waterloo Region would actually take that framework and build it at the local level. So local communities could measure their own child and youth well-being and see how they're actually doing. And the UNICEF partnership, they needed someone to do that. So it was a perfect time to establish a formal partnership between Waterloo Region and UNICEF Canada. Their plan was then to take what we developed in Waterloo Region and deploy it to communities across the country through their national network.
Very cool. So thank you. This is for information. I see no questions. So shall we move on to aerospace and aviation strategy update?
Okay, so this is our last item on the agenda, and we will keep it very brief. We did want to just provide you with an interim update on some work we're doing around aviation and aerospace. So where this, as we talked about at the start of the meeting, one of our focused areas is around data and doing cluster development strategies in which then businesses in Waterloo Region can use this information to organize and help grow. It can be a tool and information for us to help attract new companies to the region. So, for example, Waterloo EDC could use this to build on their efforts to bring more companies here. So we were, I think, given the regional airport is a key asset of the regions and served as a base for a lot of aviation and aerospace activity, we thought we would see what the opportunity was in Waterloo Region when it comes to aviation, aerospace, the industry, and what opportunity exists to grow that industry. So we started having some initial conversations with some private sector companies here and our post-secondary institutions as to the state of aviation and aerospace in Waterloo Region and what they felt was needed to grow the sector. There was overwhelming enthusiasm around some sort of coordinated approach to trying to build this sector in Waterloo Region. So what we decided to do in late 2019, we worked with PwC, who had been working with Waterloo EDC and Toronto Global on a corridor study project to look at various industries in the corridor and what opportunities exist. Part of that, they had touched on looking at aerospace. We wanted to do a much more in-depth study as to what the aviation and aerospace opportunities were in Waterloo Region. So we essentially piggybacked off that contract and worked with PwC to do this in-depth study here. We've since been working with them and have done quite a bit of work on talking to primarily our private sector companies here. We've made some very interesting discoveries and identified some opportunities to grow this sector here. We will be planning to come back to this committee in the early summer timeframe with a final report with the findings from this study and the opportunities assessment for this sector here. But what we wanted to do was provide a very quick update for you. So I'm going to very quickly turn it over to Emily and Ryan just to finish up with a couple key points on some of the work that's been done today.
Welcome, Emily and Ryan. Is Emily going first?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair Edmund, and thanks, committee members, for the opportunity to speak today. So as we were working through this study, the first order of business was really assessing our local ecosystem here to make sure that we had a very clear handle on the existing activities. So we now not only spoke with local aviation and aerospace companies, but as Matthew alluded to, also to a lot of the related and supporting organizations, such as post-secondary institutions, such as local incubators, understand what activities, be that, research programs or educational programs, they have that are both explicitly geared towards aerospace and aviation, but that also may not be explicitly geared towards that, but still have strong applicability. In speaking with the local companies and the local institutions, we got a much better understanding of what it is that they do, where they fit into the national and global aerospace and aviation ecosystem, and very importantly, what it is that they need in order to be able to grow, both generally and also very specifically what support they would like to see from the region to be able to do that. In tandem with these conversations, staff also assessed both the airport lands as well as a lot of the land surrounding the airport to better understand what land is available, as well as what the readiness of the different sites looks like. As Matthew mentioned, we really see our airport as a key pillar of this strategy, both to be able to support existing businesses and organizations to grow, but also as a way to attract businesses from outside of the region to either relocate or expand here. We've also looked at, we've taken a broader view of the market to understand where we can be moving forward. So a lot of this work was completed by PwC. So they looked at some of the key characteristics of major aerospace hubs and major aerospace clusters around the world to understand what it is that they're doing right. And we're starting to explore the ways in which Waterloo region measures against some of those key characteristics. They're also looking at some of the emerging trends in the aerospace and aviation industries, as well as the subsectors. And again, this will be part of the broader strategy and the broader discussion towards understanding how Waterloo region can really develop a unique strategy, not to duplicate what existing aerospace hubs are doing. So unless Matthew or Ryan would like to add anything, I can turn it over to Ryan to discuss some of the preliminary ecosystem findings.
Through you, Chair Redmond, I just wanted to also say that just really highlight the fact that we've so far through this process, staff have actually talked to over 45 local aviation and aerospace companies, which really gives us a really good insight into what these companies are saying, what the opportunity here is in Waterloo region, and really has served as a foundation for this whole strategy to hear what the business needs are here. So it's been a very comprehensive, in-depth process so far, and we're hoping this is the first time it's been done in Waterloo region, a study like this, and so having it informed by particularly all these private sector companies, we're hoping will really give us some insight into what the growth opportunities for this sector are in the region.
That's great. Ryan, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chair Redmond. I'll be brief as well. About 20 years ago, Waterloo region had about 100 technology companies. And when you look about today, most people don't know is that there's about and over 100 aviation and aerospace companies in Waterloo region. And so this is at the very beginning, but there's quite a few companies here that once you start identifying who they are and what they're doing on, what they're working on, you start to pull the pieces together. What we found out is that there's quite a few advanced manufacturing companies. And as Emily talked about, a growing number of advanced and emerging technology companies. This is closely linked to our startup ecosystem, and that's one of our competitive strengths in terms of how our community is slightly different than others. We have the highest density of aerospace companies in Ontario. And so when you look at that, you say, oh, what does that mean? But you have to look at communities like Hamilton, Toronto, Ottawa. These are well-known aerospace communities, and Waterloo region certainly is starting to increase its profile and opportunity to grow this market. We have the fourth highest number of companies and jobs in Ontario, so there's some good support and some good material to work with in terms of seeing what this sector is about. I just note in terms of our future lands on the east side, There's employment lands that are being contemplated. Well, there's 50 manufacturing companies. Who knew ATS had an aerospace division? And so these are just examples as we're finding through and walking through our examples of the manufacturing companies, the aviation and MRO companies related to the airport. I'd highlight companies like NavBlue out in Waterloo, what's working on software, and they have 180 people working in the R&T park. Well, that's 100% owned by Airbus. You look at other companies like Vertec that are doing cutting edge research from a University of Waterloo spinoff. So as we start to paint this picture, I just simply end on that there is something here to investigate further. There is potential to grow this industry. Most of the companies working in aerospace they've identified the opportunity to work with each other. And in terms of maybe Matthew, I'll just leave it on next steps here in terms of where we are. Do you want to finish this or? Okay.
Sure. Yeah. So we're, as I mentioned at the start, we're currently working with PwC to finalize this report, and we are going to come back with a more in-depth briefing and overview of the whole process, along with the findings from this study at our next ECDEV committee meeting. One of the things that we are doing through this process as well is doing an economic impact assessment of what the return on investment would be if a big company or a tier one or a OEM were to locate here in Waterloo region. What would the economic impact be on the community? So as part of this study, we're working with PwC to do that modeling, which we'll also bring back to the committee. One of the things that we are also helping to do is build industry profiles sheets. And so a lot of these, as Ryan mentioned, there's over 100 aviation and aerospace companies in Waterloo region, and most people weren't aware of that, including ourselves when we started this process. So, and a lot of these companies have key contracts with tier one or OEM companies. It's and they're right here in Waterloo region. So, really helping to profile these companies. So, working with their partners to build these company profile sheets and help get the message out about what Waterloo region companies in the aviation and aerospace sector are doing, and working with their partners at their municipalities and Waterloo ADC and industry associations to do that. So I think I'll leave it there, just saying that we'll be coming back at our next meeting with a fulsome report, and we'll have more information to share at that time.
Well, thank you all. It's very exciting. I have Councillor Ravanovich and then Councillor McGarry. Councillor Ravanovich.
Thanks. Just very, very quickly, I really want to applaud staff on all the work done in this area. This is a space that I think we as Matthew has said, I think most people aren't aware of how vibrant our local economy is in this area, and it has so much potential. And quite frankly, I think has a lot of potential for the lands around the airport as well, in particular. And so, good piece of work. Look forward to it coming to council. And Madam Chair, I'm going to have to leave in a couple minutes for another meeting, so just wanted to let you know that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGarry.
Thank you very much to staff, actually, for both reports. I didn't get my hand up in time to talk about the one with kids and our smart Waterloo region stuff, but thank you very much. And actually that does actually roll into what the work is that you've been doing to really show how diversified our economy here in Waterloo region can be. And I think that you've pointed out a few opportunities for us that really are strategic and timely, especially coming out of the economic downturn that I think that we'll see here. And I see the work that you've done here go hand in hand, not only with just our advanced manufacturing sector, but also with Conestoga and our post-secondary education facilities. I know it wasn't sort of featured here. I know it's in the back of your mind, but it sort of goes along with the time that we're at right now with Conestoga College consolidating all its skilled trades into one section, and the work that we're doing to try and look at our airport, which I think has been sort of an untapped resource, not to those of us in the know, but in maybe refocusing what those opportunities could be to our advanced manufacturing sector. And as we're looking already at the employment lens and those opportunities, this is sort of a good ecosystem, and you're just connecting all the spokes in the wheel. So congratulations, very much behind this. I think this is, as I said, an untapped piece of that puzzle, and I'm very much looking forward to what we can do with it and how to promote this. So congratulations.
Through you, Chair Redmond, to Councillor McGarry, I did thank you for raising the point about the post-secondary institutions, because I didn't mention it, but they have been absolutely critical partners in this study process. All three, the two universities and Conestoga College, have been actively engaged in this process and very supportive, and are very much excited about even just going down this path. So they've been great partners in this process, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with them.
So I want to thank staff very much, and thank council for their comments. I would have to say that playing from a position of strength in economic development is always the best position, and we don't know what our strengths are until we assess them. So thank you very much for doing all that journeyman work, so we now know what our strengths are. I'm going to ask if there's any other business. Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting. This is moved by Councillor Jowett, seconded by Councillor McGarry. All of those in favor can press yes. I dare any of you to press no. There we go. Thank you all very much for your patience. Again, staff, thank you for outstanding reports. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.